Today's video is presented by Notes and Clips. Head to notesandclips.com and use the code BADOWER25 to get the largest current site-wide discount. I have gushed at length about Loki, but if you've been paying attention, you've probably read between the lines that I struggle with Loki Season 1.
Inconceivable!
I have a problem with Loki that no one else seems to mention, and I need you to tell me if I'm crazy, or worse, if I'm right. My name is Jason Badower, and this is the panel where we look at the world through the frame of the comic book. Today, I want to talk about the crisis of continuity in Loki that I just cannot seem to get over. I am a comic book writer and artist, and I'm currently working on DC Comics' Black Label Joker Harley Volume 2. I've also literally worked on hundreds of movies and TV shows. How about I just show you? First up, a huge warning for massive spoilers for so much of Season 1 of Loki. Before we dig into this, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to be calling the Minutemen time cops. On a lesser level, it's a little more gender inclusive, but more importantly, I want to believe that somewhere out there, Jean-Claude Van Damme is out kicking ass in the MCU. And despite all the garbage I'm about to dump here, I honestly still highly recommend Loki.
I'm so confused.
These are confusing times.
I don't know if you're familiar with the term cognitive dissonance. It's the idea that you can hold two contradictory ideas at the same time. For example, on one hand, I believe Loki Season 1 is right near the top of the MCU TV offering, and I had a ton of fun with it. On the other hand, there are so many problems with Loki Season 1 that I've been forced to come to the conclusion that I fundamentally believe that the character we are watching is not Loki.
I beg your pardon?
I have no idea who this character is. He looks like Loki, but he doesn't do anything like Loki.
I'm not your guy.
I want to walk you through all my issues. Well, not all my issues. This isn't a therapy session, so just all my issues with Season 1 of Loki. I'm going to present my evidence, and I hope you'll be fairer than this kangaroo court. Because seriously, him not picking up the Tesseract would be a Nexus event in my mind. If he didn't pick it up, I'd suspect him of being
the life model decoy.
Loki is 100% right that the Avengers caused this mess. Come at me, stuff.
Ironic, Tony!
I want to start with Loki's powers. This is to remind us both of what he can do, because this show has seemingly forgotten.
Mock me if you dare.
I understand that while Loki's within the TVA, he cannot use his powers, but he's not in the TVA a lot, and his powers work just fine when he's not there. For example, as soon as he walks into the Rocksmart in Alabama, he uses magic to dry himself. Also, I'm not going to refer to anything that Loki has done previously while either holding Odin's spear or the Mind Stone scepter, as either of these might have given him enhanced powers. My old mantra for being a tedious nerd, if it's not been on screen, then it hasn't happened. But that also means the reverse is true. If it's been on screen, then it's happened. Let's walk through what we've seen Loki do. Lore. In Avengers 1, it is shown that Loki absolutely knows how to use the Tesseract. So why the hell does he appear somewhere he didn't intend to be, hundreds of feet above the ground? And why does he have so much momentum? I know, it's funny and it looks beautiful. And I gotta admit, that tonal shift towards funny and beautiful makes so much of Loki's Season 1 work. But it doesn't make sense. And right here is where
My spidey sense is tingling.
Let's talk about Loki's speed and agility. On the rewatch, this is the scene that got me, where B-15 hits Loki. The first time I was wondering, who are these people? What are their powers? I didn't know, so I just made like Elsa and... Let it go! And then...
Here's a Muppet News flag.
They're just people. So when you watch this scene again, I'm here to tell you that there is no way that this is possible. And I want to clarify. I've heard the insulting comments on Wunmi Masaku's physique. First, they're all disgusting. Second, any comments about her physique are absolutely irrelevant, because in my mind, you could have a time cop built like the Mountain from Game of Thrones and as fast as Bruce Lee, but they're still just a normal human, and there is no way that a normal human could hit Loki in a one-on-one fight. How do I know this? Because I have absolutely no idea how Loki, who has the reaction speed to catch one of Hawkeye's arrows while piloting an aerial craft in the middle of a battle, could be hit by any human being, regardless of how they look. Let's talk Loki's durability. I would argue that Loki's greatest power next to his magic is his durability. For example, he can safely touch the Tesseract without being harmed. He can also survive
Falling for 30 minutes.
to terminal velocity and just get up. He can take an explosion to the face, fall multiple stories, get hit by the Hulk, and then again just get up, and almost immediately infamously withstood the Hulk's ignominious assault in Avengers. If the Hulk had done that to a time cop, they would have exploded like a pimple after a KFC binge. Loki is tough. If a normal human punched or kicked him, don't honestly think he'd be particularly bothered. Then there's this scene.
It's cold.
it's not cold. It's not cold for either of them. Paging Dr. Wikipedia, Loki is a frost giant, which means he's immune to both the extreme cold of Jotunheim and even a frost giant's supernatural icy touch.
You had one job.
To talk about Loki's fighting skills. You probably fell asleep while Thor 2 was on, so you might have to just trust me that in that film, Loki, armed with a single dagger, takes out 4 dark elves in hand-to-hand combat without being touched. Dark elves are listed as they possess natural forms of superhuman strength, durability, speed, reflexes, and coordination. Loki is also skilled enough that he could throw a knife and headshot a frost giant, which in my mind makes a strong argument that he could indeed be
Noob Master.
Yeah, Noob Master 69.
He can also hold his own in a hand-to-hand fight and a knife fight with Valkyrie, one of Odin's elite trained warriors. She's like Asgardian special forces. Loki would have been carving a path through TVA agents more reminiscent of the bride from Kill Bill 1 than whatever this is. I hate to say it, but Loki would not need strength. And let's not forget that according to Marvel.com, Loki possesses strength far superior to humans. We don't exactly know how strong he is though, but he threw one of his knives with enough force to break through and shatter a frost giant's icy weapon, which is as strong as an Asgardian sword blade. So again in episode 1, how is Hunter B-15 manhandling Loki? You can remove his powers, that's fine, but physiologically, Loki is still a frost giant. This would be like having a 6-year-old physically trying to shove around the Terminator, and that's just not gonna happen. Oh wait, actually we saw that movie.
They're walking all over me.
Kindergarten cop.
Hey now, if you're still with me, maybe I've said something vaguely interesting. If you've got it in your heart to hit that like button, that would be greatly appreciated. But let's talk about my big issue with Loki Season 1. Loki's magic. Well, the problem is that Loki can actually do so much more, and he doesn't use his powers that he's already demonstrated in previous films, even though he could really use some of them in these situations in Loki Season 1.
I request elaboration.
I just want to talk about his main powers. His decoys. I would argue that Loki's decoys are his signature power. It is his first power that Loki ever displays in that first fight in Jotunheim, and we've seen him use it again and again in every single movie that he's been in, except Infinity War, because they wanted you to know that he was dead. He uses it to trap Thor in the Avengers, and in fact, I would argue it's his whole identity in Ragnarok. It's the whole point. He's never actually there.
You're here, I might even give you a hug.
So let's count how many times that Loki uses a decoy over the course of this 6-episode series. It's 0. I'm sorry to be facetious, but it's true.
This is madness.
And it's not just Richard E. Grant that can do illusions either. In Thor 2, Loki made his cell appear significantly different, showing that he can affect area around his environment. He also staged that gigantic pantomime with Thor where he cuts his hand off. And if that doesn't work, he can also make other people look like other people too. Decoys and illusions could have been pretty useful when you're outnumbered in a fight, or when he's getting his ass kicked for some reason by random possessed rednecks. Cloaking. Loki has advanced cloaking stealth and maybe even invisibility. He could shield himself from Heimdall and sneak frost giants into Asgard under Heimdall and Odin's watch in Thor 1. But most relevantly, he could hide from shield agents when he visited Thor in his cell. This power seems pretty useful when you're stowing away on a train. Mental manipulation. Again from Marvel.com. Loki can connect to others telepathically and can see into their memories. We've seen him do this in Thor Ragnarok, which came out 4 years before this.
I'm terribly sorry. Must be a very painful memory.
He forced Valkyrie to relive her memories. Seems like a pretty useful power for someone dealing with people whose memories might or might not have been tampered with.
I could have done better.
Telekinesis. This is the only power that I think they did a really great job on. They even scaled it way up in this sequence where he tries to escape Lamentus. This is actually almost abnormal amounts of telekinesis, but he was under duress, and both Loki and the show made a big deal out of it. It foreshadows the final confrontation with Alioth, that if Loki digs deep enough, he can do extraordinary things. But I wanted to end the list on a high, because the rest just kept mounting up for me. I watched every fight being like, why is he not using his powers? Why is this opponent a problem for him? Dramatically, it made every single one of his fights fake drama. This matters because these powers are core definitive ways that Loki has solved these problems in the past. This would be like a Wolverine movie where he never pops his claws. This seeded a toxic idea that I just couldn't get out of my head, and I started questioning everything, especially what makes a Loki story a Loki story. There's no game. In the few days leading up to episode 1, we see in the Avengers that Loki's killed 1,099 people, and he also ripped out a guy's eyeball, and in the past tried to commit genocide on Jotunheim. The challenge of this show was to turn Loki into a likable protagonist. They needed to change Loki into the audience's perception of him, turning what we know into what we won. At my most cynical, I would say the challenge is for Disney to convince us to put a mass murderer on kids' pajamas. Your mileage may vary. You can go back to Scott's and my last two conversations, and he completely disagrees with me on all this. But I did not believe that Loki's reaction to the TVA is what Loki would have done. I've spoken about powers, skills, and magic, and now I'm going to talk about personality.
Personality goes the wrong way.
If there is anything consistent in Loki's history, it's that he's always been the underdog, and he slowly digs his way to the top, overextends himself, and then loses. He also consistently gets caught and consistently escapes every single time. What do I mean? Thor 1, caught, escapes. Avengers, caught on purpose, escapes. Caught again and escapes. Thor 2, caught, escapes. Caught again, escapes again. Thor Ragnarok, caught, escapes.
Surprise!
Caught again, escapes again. It's what Loki does. This is a new chapter, but it's not a new situation. Loki is always caught by powers far greater than his own. He outsmarts Odin, the Avengers, Thor. Okay, outsmarting Thor isn't too big a deal, but I sort of rank Thor a little bit higher than the average time cop. Is he though? Loki is used to being outclassed. And if he's caught by the TVA, he'd immediately start looking for a way out, and not any of these idiotic short-term ploys that even I can see through.
I will need to speak to the timekeepers at once.
He's lying. Just playing games.
Here's the thing that I believe always makes Loki so fascinating to watch. He always has a plan, and we never know what it is until too late. You can go back and watch Thor 1, and even the Avengers, and you can see it from Loki's perspective. Technically, you could also do this with Thor 2. I just don't want to inflict that movie on you again. So let's go through it. Thor 1, he takes over Asgard and manipulates everyone. It is only when people start directly defying him that his plan starts going south. Avengers, he has a plan to turn the Hulk on them. Works out pretty well. Thor 2, he uses Thor's quest for vengeance to escape.
If it were easy, everyone would do it.
Thor 3, he has a plan to take over the Grandmaster's world.
Accident befalls the Grandmaster, and then...
You can go back and see Loki's plan and how he's executing or improvising on it every single scene in every single movie, right up to his death in Infinity War. And even then, he had a plan to trick Thanos. It just didn't work out. When I watched the TV show, I thought his plan was to act like a bumbling idiot to get them to underestimate him, to not use any of his powers so they don't know what he can truly do or whose side he's on. He then does this to gather information and weaken relationships as he quietly starts putting the pieces together and earns his audience with the timekeepers. But when you go back and watch Loki season 1, he has no plan. Loki's just reacting the entire time. He's unsure of who he is or what he even wants. I would also argue that a Loki without a plan is hashtag not my Loki. What you see is what you get every single time. And that makes this arguably on one hand the most beautiful Loki story I've ever seen on screen. But it is also to me, unfortunately, the least interesting story I've ever seen on screen. Previously, the fun of watching Loki was that you never have any idea what he's going to do. He is the most unpredictable character. I think it's De Niro who said that the key to acting is that your mouth says one thing, but your eyes say something else. Hiddleston does this to a magnificent degree. He likens it to Loki playing every key on the piano. The fun is that when the chips fall, you never know where Loki will be. But over the course of these 6 episodes, Loki is unfortunately exactly where you think he is. There is no long con, there's no game, there's no secondary agenda. There's just this dude who's being swept along in a plot tide stronger than he is. Narratively and story structure-wise, this also makes Loki such a weak protagonist, whereas Sylvie's clear goals and clearly defined and consistently executed power set and plan makes her such a superior protagonist, and also a superior Loki. And because Loki has no plan, and he can't convince Sylvie that he's changed, Loki has no active part in the story. He just constantly reacts. As I wrap this up, I do beg you to fulfill your glorious purpose and maybe hit that like button for me. All right, so what's the point of litigating all this apart from proving that I'm an absolutely gigantic, neurotic nerd? Why does it bother me in particular? 2 reasons. I would argue that one of the core pillars of comic books is continuity. In comics, the term continuity refers to this giant tapestry that's expanded onwards with every issue every month. It's an order and a record of events that are happening and have happened. But in sequential storytelling, continuity is so much more than that. And I don't just mean comics. I also mean long-running narratives like television, and even now, the MCU, whose movie runtime is somewhere around 50 hours. Now, an old-school standard TV show was about 40 minutes, so that's about 75 episodes, or about 3.5 seasons of TV worth of movies. And that doesn't even include the new TV shows. While DC Comics, my main employer, reboots its comic book universe with increasing regularity, Marvel has had one long universe since 1963. In both those universes, there are unfortunately a lot of mediocre and sometimes even less mediocre stories. That's just the cost of trying to put out a book every month. You are literally laying tracks in front of the train. But No matter how bad those stories got, the characters almost always exhibited a consistent level of power from issue to issue. On the big screen, I would argue that one of the main strengths of the MCU has been pushing forward these characters with an almost watertight level of consistency between movies. Not once in the past have I watched any of these 30-odd movies and saw anything where I was like,
Doesn't sound right.
all the characters, their power set remains consistent at its level and how they use it. And if their power set changes, it's an acknowledged story point. It's also why I never liked Doctor Strange, because he has no limits. You can either hand wave him a problem or he can't for reasons. He has no defined powers. And for this reason, I find Dr. Stephen Strange really boring and tedious. But unlike Strange, Loki has really defined magic. We know what he can do, and even knowing it, we're constantly surprised by how he uses it. The thrill of Loki is how he constantly tricks us, the audience. He never tricked me over the course of this series.
What can I say? I'm a mischievous scamp.
Now, we've seen villains become good guys multiple times. They change what they choose to do, not how they do it. Bucky is still just as strong, has a cybernetic arm, and still uses guns all the time, whether he was the Winter Soldier or Bucky Barnes. And that's the great thing about the MCU. The characters have always operated within their limits until Loki.
You cross me, there are deadly consequences.
The second reason I went through all this is to illustrate the failure of the TVA as the perfect villain for Loki. As I've said before, they are perfect for him philosophically and morally. To confront the man who wants to rule with an iron fist and deprive everyone of freedom, to then be ruled by an iron fist and deprived of his freedom, that is brilliant. But I believe great villains and superhero narratives need to confront the superhero both philosophically and physically, but also in a really fun visual way. Great Spider-Man villains force Spidey to adapt and use his science and webs in unanticipated ways. They create new insights into Spidey's power set, and when they team up, Spidey is forced to create those solutions under twice or even more levels of duress. It's one of the core reasons why I believe Spidey has the best rogues gallery. For example, number 2 is Batman, because I don't believe that Batman's villains challenge him adequately physically. For example, the Penguin, Scarecrow, and Joker are not going to take it to Batman in a hand-to-hand fight. It's also why they had to give Killmonger the heart-shaped herb. While his philosophy was absolutely devastating to the Black Panther, without the herb, Eric is no match for T'Challa. So back to Loki. If you need Loki to be captured at the start, you've got to create an adversary that can physically stop him, because this stick is not faster than this arrow. If you want him to get into a fight, then these humans need to somehow be a greater threat than superpowered dark elves. The physical threat the TVA presents to Loki is just not unique, nor is it an appropriate physical challenge that provides particular insight into Loki's established powers. But could they? Sure. First up, the TVA should have guns. But let's say we're committed to enlisting humans with sticks to take down variant Hulks and Thanoses. Good luck with that, by the way. Here's what their MO could be. First, they're going to try and put a portal below their opponent. Most people just going to fall into a cell in the TVA. Boom, you're done. But if you're facing a flyer, you might want to consider putting a portal above them also. If this little portal trick fails, they should all be using the collars on themselves. Agents should circle an opponent, marking themselves on multiple points on the timeline. Then as they fight, they should self-teleport between those points to attack their opponent. It would be like fighting a team of Nightcrawlers. Now that would be Loki-worthy. These sudden rapid attacks would chew through any of his decoys, illusions, and spells. This is how they could fight Loki, rather than forgetting most of his powers.
If anything, it's kind of your fault that I'm here.
This would be even more desperate for him when he finally confronts the Timekeepers, and he might actually justify the line when he faces them without any magic. Scott and I asked each other if you could just watch Loki cold, and now I think you'd actually have a better time watching it without having seen anything else. So, in the answer to my very first question, am I crazy, or am I right, or am I a little bit of both? Let me know in the comments below. Now, I'm not quite done, but it would mean the multiverse to me if you would hit that like button and subscribe so we can do this again. If you're a Loki fan, I also dropped this Loki tribute print, which you can grab off me at a convention. Head to jasonbadower.com for my schedule and come and visit me, even if you just want to say hi and maybe even discuss this video. Or if you'd like the print, you can join my Patreon at the Print Paladin level. I've also designed my Patreon so that every level offers different exclusive rewards. Check them all out at patreon.com/Jason Badower.
Look, this has been a very enjoyable pantomime, but I'd like to go home now.
So all up, on one hand, Loki is one of the absolute peaks of the MCU, a triumphant success of direction and production, and Richard E. Grant alone makes it more than worthwhile for me. On the other hand, Loki represents one of the biggest stumbles of the MCU. I can't get over that Loki is a failure to acknowledge the abilities of the main character. You need to acknowledge what has come before, or you create a crisis of continuity. I love Loki Season 1. I enjoyed the heck out of it, but I still have no idea who this is. not my Loki.
And I'm sorry that I said a bunch of harsh but very true things.
You might not know that I draw most of my art digitally, but when I draw something on an actual piece of paper, it brings so much more meaning to me. In an increasingly digital world, having something physical makes something so much more special. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Notes and Clips. This is a line of absolutely gourmet stationery. It's all hand designed and developed by two ex-software and IT developers. They want to bring you back to doing things with your own hands with something really beautiful. I know how hard it is to buy great presents for people, but Notes and Clips is now your go-to for amazing prezzies. Look at these incredible stationery boxes. These are the perfect gifts, and they cover a range of interests and styles for anyone who only has to have an appreciation for beautiful design and construction. What about weddings? Is your partner-to-be doing all the work? Get them a stationery kit and the wedding planner bundle. After that, you'll be able to fly under the radar until you got to put your tux or your frock on. And if you know someone who's into stickers, Notes and Clips has you covered. I mean, technically they're stickers, but these are next level. They're hand-printed, artisan designed. I'm going to call them adhesive decorations. You could use them for planners, cards, put them in your kids' lunchboxes, or just anything you want to make look better or feel special. And that's the thing. Everything Notes and Clips has is the perfect gift. And when you gift them, either to yourself or to someone else, please use them. It's all beautiful. It's art, but it's all designed to be used. And with worldwide shipping and tracking, you'll get your next set from the UK in 7 days to most locations. You can go to their site, notesandclips.com, and it'll even convert everything from pounds to whatever your currency is. And I think their price point is a steal for the quality. So either their Etsy store or their website, notesandclips.com. And if you use the code BADOWER25 at checkout, you'll get an even further 25% off. I don't know where you're going to find handcrafted stationery at this price. I've used so many digital tools, but there's no replacement for something real, something you could see on your desk or on your shelf. And when you go back to basics, you should do it with something beautiful. Thank you, Notes and Clips, for sponsoring today's video. I want to reiterate how good Kasra Farahani and his team were in executing the production design, but I can't help but get the tweezers out here. I just got to nitpick this scene.
Please sign to verify this is everything you've ever said.
Let's do some quick math. The average person speaks 7,000 to 10,000 words per day. Now, Loki doesn't shut up.
Because we both know you love to talk.
So let's say it's closer to 10,000. A tight screenplay has 200 words per page. That's 50 pages per day, 350 pages a week, 1,400 pages a month, or 16,800 pages per year. Now, if you've ever wrestled with a printer, this is a pile of 500 pages. So that's 33 of these a year, rounding down. Loki is 1,500 years old. So that would be about 125 of these pallets. I'm sorry to do this. I love you, Kasra Farahani, and your team, but I just had to do that. And also, what if someone wants to read it? I know time is no meeting here, but apparently that's in one of their few rights here. Jesus, just before they prune a timeline, you know what the TVA's got to be doing? Raising the Amazon forest to make all the paper that they need.